Hey everybody, welcome to our fourth podcast. I'm so excited. Now the weeks are going by, everything's taken care of technically, and I'm just excited because now we can actually dig into these topics and just have a great time and just talk about music, which is the most important thing. And so this week I thought we'd talk about common myths about, I always get that word, tongue twisted, myths, about learning music. And there's so many, and there's just tons. I even looked online to see there was tons of like music industry myths, classical music myths, that type of thing. Even like kind of, what did I see? There was a few that talked about like kind of creepy rock music myths, like things like that. I guess like spinning records backwards and all that kind of nonsense. But today we're going to talk about learning music myths. And the ones that I figure we talk about, the ones that I come across the most when I talk to obviously adults and then even older students, and that kind of the topics that I have to keep kind of correcting and redirecting students so they don't think that way. Because the thing about thinking something that's not true when it comes to learning anything in life, it's sorry for all the horn and honking. It's really dangerous, because if you get that idea stuck in your head and it's not true, then you're kind of forever have that as a downfall and kind of as a, not a crutch, but it's just like this weight that's on you all the time. So let's get started with myth number one. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. And if you're watching it on the website, be sure to leave a comment down below if there are anything that I missed today. If there's something else that you kind of question with your music learning, by all means ask, and we'll answer it at the next podcast. So the first one is that learning music is hard. And this is a tricky one, right? Because we could say anything is hard. And being a lover of learning new things, I've always approached learning anything with the attitude, well, if that person could do it, I could do it. So I kind of always had that idea in my head. I never had a fear of like, what if I can't learn something? I figured if other people can do it, there must be a way, a method, or a teacher that can show me how to do it. So it's only as hard or as easy as you make it out to be. So with that said, it really is a myth. Music is no harder than anything else. And if you approach it in a step-by-step method, then there's no reason you can't conquer that like anything else. I think the reason people think it's hard is because there's this idea surrounding that, like, you're either born a musician, you're born an artist, you're born a creative person or not, or whatever, all these kind of psychological personality tests, which they may be fun to talk about, but I don't like those because they really kind of keep you in a box. And I really feel like we can all do whatever we want. Does that mean we're all going to be Mozarts? No, of course not. That's silly to assume that that's going to be the end result of anybody that starts music. Just as it'd be ridiculous to think we're all going to wind up being LeBron James if we practice basketball, or Tom Brady if we do football, or Messi if we do soccer. That's illogical. No one, I think, deep down believes that we could all reach the same level. However, to enjoy learning something, to enjoy doing something, it doesn't mean that it's like, oh, it's off the table. Excuse me. It's off the table because, oh, it's so difficult. And music is not that difficult. So the reason I say that is because something like, I always talk about with my students, music on the radio, right? If you're thinking about pop songs, let's think old-timey stuff, like the Beatles, right? Which we all know the songs, like Let It Be. If I play that for you, that is, I don't want to say super easy, but pretty darn easy, because we're just talking 4 chords that if you just take a few weeks, a month or so, you can learn. It might not be perfect, but the fact that you can reach that level of playing and enjoy singing such a wonderful song so quickly, to me, that indicates that it's a skill that's not completely out of reach. Now, of course, if you want to play something like Mozart Piano Concerto, yes, of course. That's going to take you a little bit longer. Not that you can't do it, but it's definitely attainable. The learning curve is pretty soft. It's not like, oh, this is so difficult. We're not learning to become an Air Force pilot. So I definitely want to debunk that myth. Music in and of itself is not hard. It's challenging. There are moments when you're like, oh, I'm not getting better. But if you just kind of chug away at it, it's a super reachable. It's a super reachable goal. So definitely not hard in that sense. So number one, debunked. Learning music is not hard. Number two, you have to practice a lot to become a good musician. Now, this I might get some flack from teachers for this, and it's okay. It's all right. I welcome all opinions. But when it comes to practicing music, again, if you're trying to learn Mozart piano concerto or applying for Juilliard or something super high level, yes, of course, you have to practice a lot. There's no way to kind of skip that. Again, with the sports analogy, you can't be an elite athlete at like the top levels of the Olympic level without training every day and for training for a significant amount of time. So I'm not going to come out and be like, you don't have to practice at all. But to become a good musician, even if you practice a small amount every single day, you'd be amazed how far you can come. It's incredible. Music is just wonderful that way. But the most important thing, and this is definitely extremely important, just like exercising, if you only do it once a week, once a month, once in a while, yes, you will learn a little bit, plateau, and sadly, for many musicians, kind of stay there for years and years and years. And I don't want that to happen to you. So what part of this myth that's not completely a myth is the fact that you don't need to practice a lot, like insane amounts, like hours a day, but you do need to practice consistently. And that goes with any skill in life, right? When you're in college, you go steady. You don't just go to college for a week and then come back 3 months later. Nothing works like that in life. Music is no different. So the myth is you need to practice a lot, but you do need to practice consistently. So that's kind of, we'll call that a half myth, a half debunk. But it's amazing. If you do, I would say half an hour a day, even if your schedule's crazy, 15, 20 minutes a day, but consistently every day, amazing. You'll see tremendous amounts of progress, especially when it comes to that pop stuff, and especially when it relates to your kids. For the younger you are, the more that small amount of time means more, right? For an adult, practicing half an hour is definitely not the same as a child practicing half an hour. If you can get your 6, 7-year-old to enjoy and practice music for 20, 30 minutes, that is a miracle in and of itself, incredible. And you will see tremendous progress. And hey, like I always mention, how about you do it together? How great is that to share that as a family? So you practice, your children practice, and you guys can share that experience together. That's another huge bonus. So again, half debunk, half myth, we'll call that one. Number 3, and this one happens, I hear all the time. Oh, I'm too old, or my kids are too young. It's always the extreme, right? There's always like this reason why we can't start just yet. And I've talked about this in previous podcasts and previous videos and tons of videos I mention all the time when parents ask, oh, is my child too young? Sometimes if the child is, say, 3 or 4 and they try playing an instrument, their hands might not be big enough. They might not be able to retain kind of their attention span to learn. However, that doesn't mean you can't immerse them in music in and of itself, right? Maybe they won't pick up a violin just yet or a piano or a guitar, but they can definitely learn music. You can share music in the same way. Think about it. We don't ask, oh, is it too young for my child to learn their ABCs or their colors or their shapes or their numbers? We never ask that because, of course, it's never too young. The earlier you expose them to that, the better it's going to be for them to be immersed and kind of understand those symbols and what they mean and how to put them together once they start reading and writing and drawing and all those things. Music is the same thing. There is no youngest age to expose them to music. So again, about the sharing as a family, why not just talk about music, put on pieces, show them shapes like we did with Color Me Mozart, show them what middle C looks like and what E looks like in F and all these notes. They might not be able to explain it just yet, but they'll have that in their subconscious. And then once they start connecting and they see an instrument later in life, in their following years, maybe when they're 5 or 6, in pre-K and kindergarten and first grade, they'll be like light years ahead of the other kids, because they'll have already been exposed to music when in some schools they don't even start music till like 3rd and 4th grade, which to me is complete tragedy. And on the other end of that spectrum, if you're saying I'm too old, I already missed, I always wanted to learn, that's just phooey. That's ridiculous. And I say that because, first of all, this is your story, right? Who's to say you're too old? There's so many stories of people that started late in life when it comes to music and art. And I know my dad was a painter, and he would always tell me story of artists. I don't want to get them wrong, so I'm not even going to pretend like I remember which artist. But I remember he mentioned quite a few artists that like are huge names in the art world and left a huge legacy and are tremendously respected. They didn't start till they were later in life. It's not like they needed to start as a prodigy when they were 4. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Again, does that mean you're going to be the next Mozart? Maybe, maybe not. But if you don't try, you're never going to know. But the saddest part of all is that you won't get to experience the joy of creating music, you know. And there's a famous scene in Dead Poets Society, which is a great movie with Robin Williams, and the other professors talk about that. That, oh, if you try later in life or when you're young and you don't turn out to be amazing or a prodigy or the next Mozart or a Beethoven, then they'll be disappointed. But that doesn't make any sense. Then we would never start anything in life. This is your story. Enjoy it. Start at any stage in life. And what I will promise you is that music is so rewarding. It'll make you feel so good that the only thing you'll say is like, oh, why did I let that idea in my head stop me from starting sooner? So whatever, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, doesn't matter. I recently started teaching a professor in his 50s, picked up the guitar. He's having a blast. And it just goes to show you, it doesn't matter. It's the enthusiasm that counts. And back to the same point that I keep making. Enjoy it together with your family. It's a wonderful thing to share. You can play some chords, your kids can sing, and then switch. It's no more joy than that. And we get to our last myth. And this one's completely debunking. And this goes with anything in life. I think with when we see people that are successful and really good at what they do, we just assume they're natural because that's the phrase that we use. If we see somebody great at a sport, we're like, oh, they're just a natural. But that's unfair to them because we don't see all the hard work that they put, right? We just see the few minutes that they play, like the Olympics. We just see that one race, that one swim, that one marathon, that one game, and the countless hours and sacrifice that they put behind it. Is there. It just shows up in the game. So that our fourth myth, I say that all because it says songwriting or creating music comes quickly as magical inspiration. We just assume that composers, whether it's Mozart or Ed Sheeran or any of these songwriters or composers that you might, Hans Zimmer, he's a famous film composer, Herbie Hancock, he's a great jazz pianist and composer. We just assume they sit at the piano and all of a sudden it's like, oh, sorry. And Beethoven's like, yeah, that sounds great. That's not how it works at all. Beethoven especially, he labored over those scores all the time. The amount of classical composers that reworked Chopin, he would rework his scores and his pieces, then he would perform them in public and then fix something. It's like a never-ending process. But there is this kind of idea that if you're super talented, then it just kind of comes at you. And sometimes we read about that. It happens occasionally where a songwriter will be like, I don't know, it just kind of came to me. However, the part that they're not telling you is that then they had to go into the studio and work that song and record it and mix it and get great musicians to play it. It's not this just one, flash idea and everything's there. It's the equivalent of like if you have a business idea and you're like, I'm going to start a restaurant. Yeah, the idea for the restaurant might be great, but you still have to go through the steps of making it happen, And so get that out of your head that music or music writing or creating is reserved only for those super talented flash moments of inspiration for the select few geniuses. That's not how that works at all. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I feel like so many wonderful songs and pieces of music are left uncomposed and unwritten because we believe that most musicians don't try to write. So I try to encourage all my students to learn how to solo, to learn how to create, to learn how to write their own songs, to learn how to compose their own music. That's why reading and writing music is so important. And we're living in a time now that kind of reading music is kind of downplayed a little bit, where it's like, oh, I don't read music and I'm still a success. That's great for them. However, you don't want to be one of those musicians. You want to be able to there's the trucks on the bus. You want to be one of the musicians that can speak and read and write the language, so you can be a more versatile musician and enjoy that aspect, right? Because you can listen to an audiobook, but reading a book is way more powerful, and you're happy that you can read. Same thing with music. So that's completely debunked. I never liked that one. And unfortunately, when they interview a lot of stars in any field, they always talk about that, where it's like, yeah, it kind of just came to me. We kind of admire that and wish we would get a quick flash of inspiration. It's I believe it's Thomas Edison. He said, what's a genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. I believe that's the quote. I hope I'm getting that right. But the idea is there, right? It's that one aha moment, and then you gotta work like crazy to make it happen. So I hope you enjoy these myths. I hope I hope you agree with me, but I take that back. You don't have to agree. I would love to hear what you think. If you had a different experience with any of these ideas surrounding music, if you've overcame any of them, be sure to share that in the comments, because you never know what your story can help other people. I've been inspired by so many stories, so I love hearing everybody's story is so unique and what they went through and how they overcame it and where they are now. So more than anything, just encourage you to share your story, share that music with your kids, have a blast, and I'll see you guys next week for our podcast number 5. And until then, take care. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.